Oh yeah, let me link it.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, this is the 23rd word, uh, the first chapter, the fourth point. So this week and I guess next week we're going to focus on the second theme for the retreat, which was craving success or perfection or seeking perfection, excellence, that type of theme. So we thought that we would start from the fourth point in the 23rd word. In our group meetings, we're actually going through the first point, but each points are pretty independent from each other, but they start off with one verse. So we can read the verse and then read the fourth point and have our discussion, inshallah. So the 23rd word, it starts with these three verses. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Indeed, we have created man on the most excellent of patterns, then sent him down to the lowest of the low, except those who believe and do good deeds. And the Arabic is لقد خلقنا الإنسان في أحسن تقويم ثم رددناه أسفل السافلين الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات. So it is on these verses that Nursi is then writing a tafsir or just writing his understanding. So these verses, I guess we can briefly just touch on them. Um, they're interesting because it says we have created man on the most excellent of patterns. And then right after that, it says sent him down to the lowest of the low. So he has been created at the most excellent of patterns, but apparently he also has the capacity or potential to fall down to the lowest of the low. And the verse continues, except those who believe and do good deeds. So aminu wa aminu salihat. So apparently it's saying that the way you stop yourself from falling to the lowest of the low, the way you escape from being the lowest of the low and living, I guess, up to the most excellent of patterns is by belief and doing good deeds. So then Nursi says that we shall explain in 5 points, only five of the virtues of belief out of thousands. And this is what the 23rd word is about. It's about the virtues of belief, and it's specifically the five points that he will focus on. So today we will focus on the fourth point, inshallah. And could I get a volunteer to read the fourth point? I think we can read the whole thing. It's about a page and a half, and then we can go back to discussing it from the start. But it'd be good to, I think, get a high level view of it.
I'd like to read.
All right, go ahead.
Fourth point. Belief makes man into man. Indeed, it makes man into a king. Since this is so, man's basic duty is belief and supplication. Unbelief makes man into an extremely impotent beast. Out of thousands of proofs of this matter, the differences in the ways animals and man come into the world are a clear indication and decisive proof. Yes, these differences show that humanity becomes humanity through belief. For when animals come into the world, they come complete in all points in accordance with their abilities, as though having been perfected in another world. That is, they are sent. They learn all the conditions of their lives, their relationships with the universe, and the laws of life in either 2 hours or 2 days or 2 months, and become proficient in them. Animals like sparrows and bees acquire in 20 days the power to survive and proficiency in their actions that man only acquires in 20 years. That is, they are inspired with them. This means that the animal's fundamental duty is not to be perfected through learning and progress by acquiring knowledge, nor to seek help and offer supplications through displaying their impotence, but in accordance with their abilities to work and act. Their duty is active worship. As for man, he needs to learn everything when he comes into the world. He is ignorant and cannot even learn completely the conditions of life in 20 years. Indeed, he needs to go on learning till the end of his life. Also, he is sent to the world in a most weak and impotent form, and can only rise to his feet in 1 or 2 years. Only in 15 years can he distinguish between harm and benefit, and with the help of mankind's experience, attract things advantageous to him and avoid others that are harmful. This means that man's innate duty is to be perfected through learning and to proclaim his worship of God and servitude to him through supplication. That is to say, it is to know the answers of the questions: through whose compassion is my life so wisely administered in this way? Through whose generosity am I so kindly raised? Through whose graciousness am I so delicately nurtured and ministered to? It is to beseech and supplicate the provider of needs through the tongue of impotence and poverty. It is to seek from him. It is to fly to the high station of worship and servitude to God on the wings of impotence and poverty. This means that man came to this world to be perfected by means of knowledge and supplication. In regard to his nature and abilities, everything is tied to knowledge, and the foundation, source, light, and spirit of all true knowledge is the knowledge of God, and its essence and basis is belief in God. Furthermore, since man is subject to endless tribulations and afflicted with innumerable enemies, despite his boundless impotence, and suffers from endless needs and has innumerable desires despite his boundless poverty, after belief, his fundamental innate duty is supplication. As for supplication, it is the basis of worship of God and servitude to him. In order to secure a desire or wish he cannot obtain, a child will either cry or ask for it. That is, he will supplicate through the tongue of his impotence either actively or verbally, and will be successful in securing it. In the same way, man is like a delicate, petted child in the world of living creatures. He has to either weep at the court of the most merciful and compassionate one through his weakness and impotence, or supplicate through his poverty and need, so that the things he wants may be made subject to him. Or he may offer thanks for their being made so. Otherwise, like a silly child who creates a fuss over a fly, saying, "With my own strength, I subjugate things it is not possible to subjugate, and things 1,000 times more powerful, and I make them obey me through my own ideas and measures," he displays ingratitude for the bounties. And just as this is contrary to man's innate nature, so he makes himself deserving of severe punishment.
So before we go to the start and go over the text, if there's anything that caught someone's attention and they would like to make a comment on that, then I think we can pause to hear that. Just about any interesting thing you want to explore later as we get to it, or something that just caught your attention. I guess he said pretty crazy things like unbelief makes him into an extremely impotent beast, right? But okay, let's go to the start and try to see what Imam Nursi is saying here. Because I think he makes a very interesting point, and it's also, I think, a very intuitive argument as well. So let's read. So the first paragraph: belief makes man into man. Indeed, it makes him into a king. Since this is so, man's basic duty is belief and supplication. Unbelief makes him into an extremely impotent beast. So this is Imam Nursi's claim. This is what he's claiming at the start. And now he says he will give a proof about this. So out of thousands of proofs of this matter, the differences in the ways animals and man come into the world are a clear indication and decisive proof. So one of the proofs that he will now provide is about the differences in the differences between animals and humans. And if you look at this difference or observe it, then you find that there is a proof there. So I think for ourselves, maybe here, let's kind of also just like kind of step into, or like get rid of like our previous or preconceptions and just observe what animals and humans are and see if there's any proof in here that supports what Nursi is saying. So like even like let's maybe even forget God at this point, forget anything about there being a God or belief in God, but like here just think about the difference between animals and humans and of just observing them. So he continues, yes, these differences show that humanity becomes humanity through belief. For when animals come into the world, they come complete in all points in accordance with their abilities, as though having been perfected in another world, that is, they are sent. So I think we can pause here and just see if we agree with this statement. For when animals come into the world, they come complete in all points in accordance with their abilities, as though having been perfected in another world, that is, they are sent. For example, you see that a wasp or a bee, it's born, and then it instantly starts working, starts flying around, starts communicating, starts gathering pollen, honey. Just like right away, it seems that they just start going. There's not a long process for them to get training or to learn about how to even navigate. It seems that they already come, then they're ready to go. Does anyone disagree with this statement? Does anyone think that animals don't seem to be perfected in another world? Go ahead, brother Yusuf.
Before sharing any comments, so can you also motivate us why you are suggesting us to study this text? Like, how is that related to? I think you made an intro. You said that this is going to be studied under the topic of seeking perfection. So when we were discussing what problems people have nowadays, one of the things that was mentioned was we are just dying for perfection in our job, in our life, this and that. So this was mentioned the context that the topic mentioned was more in the sense that I work day and night to write the best paper, get the best grades, or cook the best food, whatever, just craving for perfection in this sense. So now you are suggesting this text, I think, related to that topic. So where are we going with that? Would you like to put a few things in there before we dive any deeper, like from 30,000 feet? What does it look like?
So I am not suggesting this has anything to do with perfection. I didn't write this text. So Nursi, I would hope, made it relevant, however. And then he starts with this verse. Again, indeed, we have created man on the most excellent of patterns, then sent him down to the lowest of the low, except those who believe and do good deeds. So, and apparently there's this claim here that man has been created on the most excellent of patterns, or you could say man has been created perfectly or for perfection, or the potential capacity for perfection, let's say. And then he also has the capacity potential to be the lowest of the low. And then the verse continues giving you why or how this perfection might be achieved. And it's through belief and good deeds. So reading this as someone who has, let's say I'm reading this verse, putting myself into Nursi's shoes a little bit, and I don't feel I am perfect. I feel like there are many imperfections. And as I try to reach perfection, or I strive for excellence, or I strive to be great at something, I see that I just keep falling down to the lowest of the low in many ways. And then the verse gives me, or my creator claims that it's for those who believe and do good deeds. They will be able to find that perfection. And then my understanding of Nursi is now that in this fourth point, he will give one of the ways in how belief helps you reach that perfection, or how belief puts you on that path where that perfection now makes sense. Like the ways I used to strive for perfection or excellence, or this craving of perfection I had within me, I was probably misusing it. And that's why I was falling to the lowest of the low. But Nursi is saying, as the verse is claiming, that if you use belief correctly and through belief, then you will be able to find perfection in the right way. That's my basic understanding. But if you have something to add, please go ahead.
I'm just trying to merge the ideas. So if I am very conspicuous or like picky about making my car spotless clean, and this is my way of perfection, and I'm proud of I mean, it's not real. That's why I'm giving it as an example. I'm proud of being the super duper clean guy with his car. So that sort of a perfection could become purpose of my life, or how I identify myself with, and everybody in the street that I live in knows me as such, and I'm proud of that. So I'm hoping that by we study this text, I will see whether this is a true perfection or whether this could be rectified in a way that it's going to become a useful or proper perfection. So, if that makes sense, I'm just trying to locate the problem in my head with the text that we have here.
Right. And I think for that specific case, your car, it could definitely, it might be helpful there. I think in more general sense, just the way you all, like, where you seek or how you see the purpose of your life. If you see the purpose of your life is it's aligned, or having the most spotless car, the most fancy car, and having a car collection, if this satisfies your life, if you feel that it satisfies you, it aligns with your humanness, meaning that when you do it, you feel you get fulfillment out of it, then that's your perfection. But if you're seeing that there are issues that you run into there, and you find yourself in the lowest of the low at times, then it shows that maybe there's a different approach where now you can find fulfillment or satisfaction a different way. Was that a comment, Zara, or I'm guessing it was just a mistake? But I think also Nursi explains it well. So I think as we go through, we'll get an understanding of it. So again, coming back to the second paragraph here, and if anyone has comments, just raise your hand and feel free to raise your hand. So here Nursi is saying that, going back, just summarizing, belief makes man into man. Indeed, it makes him into a king. So it's a very big claim. Since this is so, man's basic duty is belief and supplication. Unbelief makes him into an extremely impotent beast. This is what we started off with. Now he's going to give us a proof of it. He says that when animals come into the world, just look at animals, they come in complete in all points in accordance with their abilities, as though having been perfected in another world, that is, they are sent. So this is just an observation. I think you can't really disagree with it. They learn all the conditions of their lives, their relationships with the universe, and the laws of life in either 2 hours or 2 days or 2 months, and become proficient in them. Animals, they call them instinct in science, but essentially what it means is when you see animals, it seems like they're just ready. They're ready to just fly. I guess birds take some time to fly, but even then, it happens very quickly. Animals get up to speed very quickly, and they become independent from their mothers very quickly as well. So it seems that they don't have this long training process. Animals like sparrows and bees acquire in 20 days the power to survive and proficiency in their actions that man only acquires in 20 years. That is, they are inspired with them. So here, Nursi, instead of using the word instinct, I think the original is ilham, I believe. But it's an inspiration. These animals have an inspiration, meaning they're created like a bee has the inspiration, or it's created within a bee to be able to start flying around and start collecting food and start building a honeycomb and all these things like right away, or start being able to locate. For example, like a sea turtle, it just hatches from its shell in the coast, and then it knows somehow to run into the ocean all by itself, the baby, and then it knows how to migrate around like thousands of miles. So all these things, a sea turtle that just hatched, it knows how to do all these things out of inspiration. This means that the animal's fundamental duty, and this is now Nursi's conclusion, or from this observation, I think it's a very important sentence. This means that the animal's fundamental duty is not to be perfected through learning and progress by acquiring knowledge, nor to seek help and offer supplications through displaying their impotence, but in accordance with their abilities to work and act. Their duty is active worship. So he's saying that the animals, they don't seem to be going through a learning progress, like a learning and training progress. And so their duty is not to seek help and offer supplications through displaying their impotence. So impotence means their weakness, their neediness, their lack of ability. It's saying that animals don't seem to be doing that because they come with so much ability already. They're so ready for so much. They're so capable. So it seems that their actual duty is in work and acting. So in their abilities to work and act, their duty is an act of worship. So meaning they're straight away doing things. They're falling into activity. Whether it's running around and eating things, or it's flying, or migrating, or other things that animals do. But so this part, I would like to kind of ask the question, like, does that make sense? Does it make sense that when you look at an animal and see how an animal lives its life from being born to its death, that it doesn't seem to be going through a classroom type of education like humans go through? It doesn't seem to be, failing and then learning type of thing that humans go through. Or maybe at a very small degree, it might, depending on the animal. But it seems more like they come ready, they already have all the knowledge that they need to know, and they just act. If anyone has a disagreement or just a comment about this, I'll take a pause. Yes, please. Brother Yusuf first.
So, I mean, that's a valuable observation. I heard a similar observation from a biologist friend. He was not a Muslim, and he didn't know Nursi was making that comment, but his comment was that humans are different. Like, we are learning so many things, getting all degrees, becoming professors and whatnot, but humans do not transfer knowledge to the offsprings. If you think about the plants, let's say, or think about those, let's say, pure breed horses and whatever. So the traits, which is, if you think about it, fruit of their life, is being carried down to the next generation. But human, if you just look at humanity, studying, learning, all these, and then the knowledge, it just goes, if assuming that it's stored in your brain, it goes into the grave with you. So he was very much astonished by that. And I found it interesting that people can do such observations. And Nursi is making a similar observation here, saying that, well, those animals are coming here as if they already know everything. They do not improve anything. Hence, they come in the perfect form. Because if there was some improvement to be made, then you will need to hand it over to the next generation in a better form. But B is B, horse is horse, lion is lion. So whatever is supposed to be learned, they come here, they practice it, and then they die. The next generation picks it up from where it was supposed to be. But this is not happening for the human, which is a quite interesting. If we think carefully about it, it's a very, very interesting case. Why is it happening like that? And apparently Nursi is asking that question. Seriously, why is it happening like that?
Aisha, I think you also had your hand up if you want to make a comment.
Yeah, I just had a brief comment. Jazakumullah khair for everyone's thoughts so far. I guess here, so he starts this paragraph by saying these differences show that humanity becomes humanity through belief, right? And this sharp contrast that he's drawing between human life and animal life, right? In which animals don't go through this sort of intense 20-year learning process, and 20 years is just one sort of example. I mean, we keep learning, right? Our learning never comes to an end for 60, 80, 100 years. So I guess what I take from this paragraph is that Nursi wants us to question why this is the case, right? Why is it that I, as a human being, have to go through these struggles, yet I have this need for perfection within me, but I can't immediately or sometimes ever just grasp it. So that this sort of reality of mine as a human being shows that there must be something in the process of learning, something in the process of failing, something in the process of struggling that becomes essential in my human existence and in my connection to my creator, right? And as he'll explain it, here, I mean, he says it in terms of like animals don't seek help or offer supplication, right? Their worship is immediate through just the perfections that they signify. But that for me, and he'll get into this, I suppose, it is through that striving, it is through that failing, it is through that experiencing and thirst for perfection that I'm able to form my connection with my creator, that I'm able to recognize that he's the owner and the source of all the perfection that I seek. So here then it shows that what should be perfected of me as a human being is not necessarily like this skill or that skill, but something in my understanding, something in my cognizance, something in how I relate to my creator. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you for your comment. I think inshallah we'll get to those points. I think at this point, let's try to focus on I guess our difference, or maybe even is really an animal different than a human? And as you kind of said, there must be something there. Since as a human I'm so much more, there must be something there. Mohammed Siad, go ahead, please.
Assalamu alaikum, it's Kadir at Sial's place. So I have a question, like we're talking about perfection. So could someone like describe like what perfection is, like what are the perfection that we're trying to achieve? For example, for the animal's case, it's like the ability to do the work to the best of your abilities. Like, for example, if an animal has an ability to, maybe for the bees, that example that we had of going to the polar and everything, they have that ability, and doing that work to perfection is like being said as like the perfection for the animal. So what would be the perfection for us, like knowing the purpose of life, or what would you say for that? Thank you.
I think that's a great question, and I think that's where the topic is going. So we can just continue with the topic then. Unless someone else has another comment they'd like to then I will go with the next paragraph. Brother Beytan, go ahead.
Selamünaleyküm. I may stop talking. If I do, please continue. I think Kadir's question is really important, because like if we read this text and the topic in general as a way of answering the question, how am I going to become perfect, or in what sense I will become perfect, then it will, my understanding is that it will cause us nothing but pain again, because it will be just substituting one thing. For instance, the spotless car. This is what defines me, so I will get the cleanest car ever. We will get rid of the car, and instead we will say I will become the best, let's say, learner, or best, I don't know, worshipper, best something. I will become perfect in knowing my creator. Like, it's substitute one thing with another thing, and maybe it won't be much different. So we have to be careful with that. And my sorry, my understanding, like if we start from the beginning and take the problem in hand, what is the problem that we are in our society, in our life, in our, the personal lives? We are trying to become perfect. These, in old days we would use the perfectionism in a negative way, negative connotation, but nowadays it's almost encouraged in a different flavor. We have to become best student, we have to become best X, Y, Z, doesn't matter. The most handsome guy, most attractive, the person. And like there are two things about that. Like one thing, it doesn't work. No matter how much I try, I don't become the best or the perfect thing. For a moment, I think I become like, this is what happens with famous people. We are introduced a new famous one, a new famous figure, and we say that, okay, this is perfect. He's good for humanity. And then next day we realize that he's another crazy guy trying to just boost his or her ego. But anyway, it seems to be working for a moment, and then it doesn't work. And in return, it gives me pain. It gives me this, the great level of anxiety. Sometimes the high amount of the the responsibility that I cannot handle comes with the depression and so on, which is, at the end, it becomes something, a source of pain for me. So I guess there are two questions here. One is why I'm seeking this. Why do I have this urge? And the second, why it's not working. Maybe I can add another third question. Like, then what is the wisdom, justice there? Like, I have this urge. Maybe it is just a synthetic urge. I don't know. Maybe it is imposed by the society, by family, and so on and so forth. But to me, it's, feels so internal. The third question is why I have this urge, but at the same time, it doesn't work. And it has to end with pain. What is the point of this? So, and I guess the ayah that we are studying is defining us a new framework, completely new understanding of human being, saying that you have these, the urge for these reasons, and we have to study. I'm not giving the answer on purpose. You have this urge for these reasons, and when you use it in a wrong way, the idea is maybe not become perfect in something, but something else maybe. When you use it in the wrong way, you get nothing but pain. So you define yourself in a mistaken way. Your quote unquote perfection lies in something else. And very interesting, in the first point of this text, author says human is perfect and created in the perfect form because he's needy, because he has all these weaknesses, because he has all these numerous enemies. This is the perfection in the creation, not the perfection in human, but the perfection in the creation of human. So it's not about you becoming perfect in something, but your creation being perfect in some sense. Again, I'm just leaving these blanks so that we can feel together as a group. But it's just the opposite of we being taught. so far, right? For us, perfection is in attaining something, gaining something. For instance, knowledge. We say humans are perfect learners. Hence, the perfection of human is learning something, gaining more and more knowledge. But the author says at the very beginning, no, this is not the case. The perfection in your creation is the fact that you are needy, weak, and you cannot, uh, uh, you know, reverse it. You cannot attain something. You cannot gain something. This is the perfection in your creation. So we have to be careful when we read this fourth point, for instance, if we read it as, oh, then the perfection of human lies in the learning, ability to learn and so on. I would say, if Nursi was living in this society, for instance, in this time, he may have used different words here to make the point maybe clearer, because he would know that even a software now can read the entire internet in a few days and can learn more things than yourself. If it's about knowledge, like when he makes the comparison between human and the animal, I guess the point is not that humans are better than us in these and that sense, but we are better than them in these and that sense, and we're trying to find these what senses we are better in. He using the learning as just an example when making the comparison with the animals, that the learning here is not about gaining something. It's about, again, the need and weakness, that you are blank, that you needs to be given things. That, at least to me, what learning represents. It's not about ability to gain something, but you have to be given. And in this given and receiving relationship, the weakness and sustenance of this weakness, need and sustenance of this need, in this relation, you realize the perfection in your creation. So again, the point, at least to me, it's not that we are better in learning and this is our perfection, so we have to be best in learning.
Jazakallah khair. Mohammed Sial, go ahead.
So I guess what I'm understanding from this text is, that there's some, why the animals are being mentioned, is that they are perfect in their own way, right? That they attain this, I don't know, they can be animals and they know the functions and the interactions of themselves with their environment without needing help. And so they are, we can assume, let's say, perfect in their own way. But human beings, we're saying that, because they are needy of so many things, especially, knowledge and learning being one of them, they are imperfect. And so maybe describing the difference, right, between between these two things, as Birkan was telling us not to read them as, but also, like, I guess relating maybe to the story of Adam, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا, right? He taught Adam the names, where we're understanding it not as, he just acquired knowledge, or he was, given information and then he was perfected, but that maybe he was needy for this, the learning, the knowledge of these names, and that had something to do with, the angels bowing down to him. And maybe that has something to do with the perfection of the human being. But what I want to bring attention to is not the perfection of the human being, but the imperfection of the human being. That in cases in the Quran, across the Quran, Allah describes, people being cursed and describes them as being like monkeys or dogs. And so where we were saying that animals have a sort of perfection, the human being, when described as an animal, is not being described in that way to say it as a good thing. right? When the human being is described as an animal, it's maybe the opposite of perfection. So maybe we can discuss that in some way.
Yeah, thank you for those beautiful points. And I think this concept of learning, and you brought up the story of Adam and علم آدم الأسماء كلها. There it's also the concept of teaching, taught Adam the names. I think I'm really liking the discussion. I think that if we do read this paragraph and we kind of follow text, maybe at least just read this paragraph, it will probably bring up some more comments and thoughts. So I would like to continue reading this, and definitely, so there are some questions posed, and let's keep those questions in our mind. Brother Bikon said, I have this urge for perfection. Why do I have this urge, and why is it not working? It seems like when I try to go for it, it doesn't happen, or it doesn't work out. Like when I try to get that perfection, and like, so what is the wisdom of it? And then Atik was mentioning how it seems the animals are perfect, but these humans are actually imperfect. So, and like a human acting as an animal is a very derogatory thing, actually. Why is that so? So these are some thoughts we can keep, and I will read this, and then of course, if you have any comments or questions or anything else, please raise your hand. So the animal's duty is active worship. It seems that they already, that's where we ended. It seems that they already come perfect in the sense that they're not going through some learning, but their duty is not to like learn or progress, but really just to do things, be active worship. And I think even here, maybe we should take a pause and think, what is active worship? Like, how does an action turn into worship? I think that's also a big topic, but let's say for now that an animal, briefly, by its actions, it is doing its own type of worship. It is supplicating to its creator, or remembering its creator. Or I mean, one way I could see this is if I see a bee and it's flying around so perfectly and very elegantly from flower to flower, and then I see that honey is coming out of this. If I read this in the name of my creator, or then I can see that this bee is reflecting some names to me. So I can see that the bee is doing some type of zikr. Like maybe that's one way I can understand that the bee is in a state of active worship. But let me read the next paragraph. As for man, or humans, he needs to learn everything when it comes into the world. He is ignorant and cannot even learn completely the conditions of life in 20 years. Indeed, he needs to go on learning till the end of his life. Also, he is sent to the world in a most weak and impotent form, and can only rise to his feet in 1 or 2 years. Only in 15 years can he distinguish between harm and benefit. And I would say not in 15 years, maybe even your whole life. You still have problems distinguishing between harm and benefit. And with the help of mankind's experience, attract things advantageous to him and avoid others that are harmful. This means that man's innate duty is to be perfected through learning and to proclaim his worship of God and servitude to him through supplication. So this is a big statement, but I think he expands on that. That is to say, it is to know the answers of the questions. So these are the questions that then that humans or man starts, I guess, asking. This is part of his learning. Through whose compassion is my life so wisely administered in this way? Through whose generosity am I so kindly raised? Through whose graciousness am I so delicately nurtured and ministered to? It is to beseech and supplicate the provider of needs through the tongue of impotence and poverty, so weakness, neediness. It is to seek from him. It is to fly to the high station of worship and servitude to God on the wings of impotence and poverty. So I think that really the key statement that Nursi is making here is this one. And then this means that man's innate duty is to be perfected through learning and to proclaim his worship of God and servitude to him through supplications. So I think, there's this huge contrast between an animal and a human. If I just observe them, I see an animal comes into the world ready to go, and it's acting. You don't need to teach a bird to fly better. A bird doesn't need to go to flying school to fly faster or to turn better or to, find the apex of the curve that it's going to fly through the air in. But then on a human, on the other hand, it goes through a very long process of learning and figuring things out. It's not ready from birth. It's a huge contrast there. Humans, you only start learning how to drive when you're like 15 or 16. And even then, you're still terrible at it. So you have to keep learning. So just someone who's observing this can see the huge contrast. And then he says that the conclusion he makes from this observation then is that man's duty then is not to be like an animal that just goes and acts, because obviously we're very different. I'm not just meant to go out there and start actively, like just directly actively worshiping, but instead, since as a human, I see that constantly I'm learning, constantly I'm trying to figure out how to do things, then my duty is to be taught or to learn how to do things. And he says to proclaim his worship of God and servitude to him through supplication. And the way I understand this is the way he jumps to this statement, because it kind of seems to be like a jump. Because, okay, up to this point, I think everyone would agree, is to be perfected through learning. As Brother Rikhan was saying, it's kind of, right now, everyone knows that, okay, man has this ability to gain knowledge. As Brother Yusuf was saying, man has the ability to pass knowledge down the generations. You can write books. And because you can write books, knowledge keeps progressing. And maybe we're at like the height of knowledge of all humankind. I think everyone would be like, yeah, humans are, perfected through learning. Like we have this ability to gain knowledge, kind of, but this is kind of where it stops, or it can stop. But the Nursi makes this seemingly, it's almost a jump, and to proclaim his worship of God and servitude to him through supplication. And the way I understand this is that since it all comes back to the neediness, as has been mentioned. When I'm going through my life, I find that I'm very needy through every phase of it. I find that constantly, as I'm learning from being a child to growing up, that I find that I always need help, that I always need guidance. I find that I'm very weak to do things, like even something like the fact that I can get sick and it just puts me, I can't do anything about it, or I'm very weak about it. And I still have so much responsibility. I'm trying to figure out, how do I live up to that? Like all these problems in my life that I'm just trying to solve, or trying to see how I can carry the burden of them. But if I look at it, I see that I'm being sustained throughout the whole thing. I see that throughout my whole life, it almost seems like if I look to my past, I see that there's like a path that I've been guided through my whole life. Like everywhere I've been, it almost seems like I've been placed there purposefully. That everything that's happened to me, it seems that it's been happened purposefully. I was like, oh, that thing that happened, and I was so unhappy about it back then. Like, oh, this college I got accepted to, or this other thing that happened to my life, like I crashed my car or something else. Everything that happened that I was unhappy with, I'm like, oh, it had a purpose, or it had a reason, or a test that I failed. There was a good reason for that. And when I say that, it means that I see that there's been this guidance. I can see this guidance throughout my life. And then I think these are where you start asking these questions. And that's kind of what Nursi is saying. Like, when I find that I'm learning throughout my life, and I see that there seems to be a sustainer behind it all, a creator, and I ask these questions: whose compassion is my life so wisely administered in this way? Like, who's the one that's being so compassionate to me? Whose generosity am I being so kindly raised by? Whose graciousness? So these are the questions I start asking as a human being, because that's kind of what the life in front of me is. Because I am so impotent and needy, and because I need to learn, because I have to go through this learning process, but at the same time, I have so little capability, or I have so little ability. But yet at the same time, I see that everything is being given to me. Again, Brother Bikram brought that comment up about this being given, being receiving. I see that I'm constantly receiving things. Then it makes me ask these questions. And then I will read the sentence and then I'll stop so that everyone else can start commenting. So then Nursi says, with these questions, it is to beseech and supplicate the provider of needs through the tongue of impotence and poverty. It is to seek from him It is to fly to the high station of worship and servitude to God on the wings of impotence and poverty. So the purpose, man's perfection, from what Nursi is writing, what I'm understanding is in asking these questions of who's the one that's giving this to me? Who am I receiving from? As you're learning, as you're going through those neediness with your problems and issues and everything you find that you need guidance in, when you ask those questions and you seek for that one who can help you in that, you seek for the one that's gracious and compassionate to you, then that's your supplication. That's when you're that's your perfection. Anyways, I talk way too much. I will pause and let people raise their hands. So I guess since no one's raising their hand, does this make sense? Like, does it make sense that we go from perfected through learning? Like, Nursi is making this claim, man's innate duties to be perfected through learning. And again, I think we would agree with this, but proclaim his worship of God and servitude through him through supplication. Like, do we need the second part of it? Like, what's wrong with this first part that we even need to go to the second part? Is it just like, yeah, we have to be religious, so let's just add that on? Footnote, we have to learn in the name of God. Like, is this what Nursi is saying? It's just like kind of we need to, like, if this isn't needed, then why even include it? Do you feel the need to, or do you even see the reason to add this? Does his what he wrote, does it even make sense for you? I didn't see who raised it first. Whoever raised it first, please go ahead. Zarian, go ahead. I'll choose you.
Okay, thank you. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I guess to me, I feel like this makes sense based on how Brother Birkan explained learning earlier. So if the idea is that we're perfected by learning that we are needy and by recognizing the fact that we are needy, I guess the next step would be to seek the one who can fulfill our needs. So I guess kind of thinking along those lines, it's like once we learn or recognize the neediness, then we have to seek the source that can fulfill the needs. And so I guess to proclaim like worship of God and servitude to him through supplication is turning to the one who fulfills our needs and asking for help. And I guess that to me would make sense. Like if I need something, I need to go to the one who like can fulfill that need, basically.
Mohammed Sial, and then I'll give it to Brother Victor.
If Birkan was first, he can go first.
No, you can go first. It's okay.
Yeah, I would say in this sentence that we've highlighted, I think you can even just remove the word and that speaks more directly of the purpose of learning. Man's innate duty is to be perfected through learning to proclaim his worship of God and servitude. So it's essentially like, what is the purpose of this learning? Is it just learning for the sake of having knowledge, or is it learning that is taking you to a particular understanding? And that understanding that you reach should essentially take you to a point where you do understand that La ilaha illallah, there's all of this is for that purpose of understanding who is your who is your God, what is the purpose of all of your learning, of all of your actions, and that should bring you to this conclusion that it is all for his worship and servitude.
Yeah, thank you for that comment, Brother Bacon. You lowered your hand, but would you like to still make a comment? Okay, then Brother Yusuf, go ahead. You're still muted if you're talking.
So, animals are learning, but they're learning in very short time. And what are they learning? They're learning how to act. Let's put it this way. So now author is comparing human. Oh, human, you are learning and it takes longer time. But let's say at the end, you run or you can go faster than a horse. Maybe you can go higher than a bird, like fly higher than a bird. But the thing is, it took you quite a time for really to learn that in terms of humanity's lifespan. Even if you think about it in your personal life, still it takes a good amount of your time to make that plane, to make that rocket and whatever. So if really purpose of your existence, purpose of your being was to, and when I say this, when your maker, if the purpose of your maker to make you were that you make a better rocket or a better flying machine, better this, better that, look what your creator makes in the rest of the existence. Like he's teaching a bird in a few days and the bird is flying, or take whatever example that he gave over there. So he says, your point then is not to be a better animal, a more advanced animal. This doesn't fit you. What should it be then? This is where I am questioning belief, iman, and dua. So the author says this is where you differ. So your learning becomes a meaningful learning or an improved type of learning if you take this aspect of the existence. Otherwise, human is going to be a lower learning machine, not a higher learning machine, because animals are doing it better. They function better for their life because you will die at the end of the day anyways. So what is the point? So your learning should have a different purpose than a bird's learning, a bee's learning. So this is where he says Iman comes into the picture, is what I'm understanding.
Would you like to elaborate on how Iman changes that learning?
Yeah, I was chasing Ali at the same time.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, inshallah, then I think he will elaborate a bit more, so I'll just keep reading until people like to talk. That's a job. It's an easy job as a moderator. Sultan, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So I guess to me, the difference between animals and humans is still kind of sketchy, our discussion. I guess like animals, they're programmed to be, good at whatever they're programmed to be good at, right? Fly well, do this well, do that well. But like humans, like the first sentence, he's basically saying like we are born to be dumb to begin with, right? But if we're born to be dumb to begin with, then why would we continue learning? Why do you want to, go ahead and get better at knowledge or whatever? And I'm not sure if I maybe missed some of the things that previously were said, but to me, it's like what he's saying right now. It's like Iman is a way to like we don't live to perfect our belief, but rather through perfecting our belief, will we perfect our knowledge or like our ways of learning. But to me, it's more like perfecting our learning should be the way how to get to Iman, because Iman cannot be the means to an end. Iman should be like the end. So I guess I'm a little confused, and if someone could clarify or, remind me of the previous discussion, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
So this topic we're just actually started it today. So there wasn't really a previous discussion tying into this, but I think if I understand your question, it's Iman needs to be the result, and you need to go through learning or go through some perfection of learning to gain that Iman at the end. And kind of there's some confusion there. Is that?
Yeah, I guess like what's the order really? Like, is it go to Iman via learning or go to learning via Iman? What's the right ordering here?
Yeah. So I guess let me first go back to the verse that we started from, just to kind of understand the picture. And then if others have answers or comments, please raise your hand. So here the verse goes, indeed, we have created man on the most excellent of patterns and sent him down to lowest of low, except those who believe and do good deeds. So those who have Iman and do Amal Salih, or good deeds. And it seems that if you are those who believe and do good deeds, then you would be fulfilling your role as having the most excellent of patterns, or living up to this, having the most excellent of patterns. But if you're not doing it with belief and you're not acting with good deeds, then you'll be the lowest of the low. So going back to the fourth point, what we're reading, so something that Brother Yusuf actually just mentioned is, man's innate duty is to be perfected through learning. If you see the perfection of as how to fly, as he said, a bird knows how to fly so elegantly and much better than any airplane or drone or anything can right now. And a whale can swim much better than any submarine. Or you see that we're achieving things that it seems animals can already do right from birth. It seems that if the only goal of the human is just to go very fast, or just eat, like gather food very fast, it seems that these are just things that animals are already doing very capably. Like animals are able to find their food, get their all their sustenance and everything very easily. So it seems that the perfection, it doesn't seem to add up that perfection isn't just replicating what an animal can do. And sometimes we do it a lot worse. Most of the time we probably do it like not even close to it. So coming to the question of like Iman and belief and where it fits into this, I think the point is, from my understanding, it's that as a human, it's inevitable that I need to learn. It's inevitable that I will go through this process of learning. And I think as I'm going through this process of learning, the other thing that is inevitable, if I'm honest with myself, is I'll realize how weak I am. If I'm honest to myself, I'll realize how needy I am. Because as I'm learning, I see that as I'm going through my life, I see that there's so much that I want to do. I have so much urges in me, as Brother Vikram was saying. Maybe I have an infinite amount of urges in me, but I see that I'm not able to fulfill those urges. I'm not able to reach the perfection that I want to get. If we were mentioning some celebrity looks amazing, perfect, the next day they look terrible, and like we don't think they're perfect anymore. So we see that I have this need and desire for perfection, but I can't. It seems that I can't achieve it, and I think it's inevitable that I realize my neediness. So I have two almost like contradictory emotions. One is I want perfection, I want to learn, and I want to keep becoming perfect. On the other hand, it seems I can never reach it. It's almost against each other. And then I think what Nursi is saying is because of my neediness, if I realize that the perfection is the things that I'm reaching for, let's say like if it's like what an animal would reach for. just like being able to build the fastest car or being able to fly the fastest plane, then that perfection is already, it's not perfection for me. It's not what a human is made for, because an animal is made for that, and an animal lives perfectly by flying, but a human is not made for just flying very fast, because we have a completely different path. And in that path, by realizing my neediness and realizing that I have a creator or I have a sustainer, asking these questions that he's saying, like through whose compassion, whose generosity, basically that's where then I guess Iman comes in, seeing that, realizing your impotence, your neediness, and then seeing that things are being given to you, you're receiving, you see how weak and imperfect you are, which is what a human is. You come to the world, let's say dumb, you use the word dumb. I mean, really, yes, you come to the world dumb. It seems that you're very imperfect compared to an animal, but your perfection, Nursi is saying, is by realizing your neediness and gaining basically questioning. And I think that questioning and seeking for the sustainer or whoever is like the one that's compassionate, asking these questions, that becomes Iman. And then like I would say it's not like an end goal. I would say that it's like a process that you're going through. Zaha, please go ahead.
Jazakallah khair. So I just wanted to share what I'm taking away from the discussion so far, and maybe you can correct me if there's anything wrong in my understanding. But I guess we're saying that in this sentence, this means that man's innate duty is to be perfected through learning and to proclaim his worship of God and servitude to him through supplication. For me, what stood out is your duty is to be perfected and not to be perfect through learning and to proclaim his worship and so on. So the difference between being a creation that has to be perfected versus that has to be perfect through learning, it shows that I can, and to be perfected is that excellent pattern that I've been created on. It shows that I can never be perfect and whole by any other definition. And this, as Zareen was saying, if there's a need, you turn to a source of that need, a source that can fulfill that need. Similarly, if you have to be perfected, you automatically, there comes where you have to turn to a source of perfection or the perfect source. And I think it carries into the second part of that sentence automatically, because saying that we are a being that has to be perfected means that we are a being that has to turn to a source that is perfect, because to be perfected, you can't do it on your own, basically. And that makes it, my understanding is that if that's how we're looking at our duty, and that's how we're created, that means whether you have Iman or not, you're automatically in servitude to a perfect source. And I have a question in terms of like, would we be able to say Iman is the proclamation of that, of, I guess, that understanding, that realization that you are in fact in servitude to a source of, to a perfect source? Like Iman is just, the difference is no matter whether you have Iman or not, you're still in servitude to that perfect source, but Iman is just, you are, you say with conviction, you have that realization that you are in fact worshiping this God who is the most perfect.
Thank you. I think that was a very, very beautiful comment. And just what I got from that, I think it's an important point is humans have this need, or you're seeking perfection, and you find that perfection, like you maybe try it out in the world for here and there, you try to find it through some maybe worldly relation, but then you see that's not working, and then you move that need, or you point it towards the source of perfection, and that's how you actually fulfill that need for perfection, and that's how you actually even find perfection, because initially you started off imperfect and you are imperfect, so you're seeking perfection. And then because you find the source of perfection, that relationship then becomes really what's perfect. And I would say, yes, I do think that relation would become Iman at that point, because you gain security off of that. Brother Yusuf, go ahead.
So then what is it that human is supposed to learn then? Because if we say that human is supposed to learn how to fly, I mean, it's clear that learning is what human is meant to do. But what is it that human is going to learn? I think this is a proper question to ask at this point. Because anybody who looks at human would say that yes, human is meant to learn, because animals are coming here as they are already taught, but human is learning here. So what is it that I am supposed to learn? Am I supposed to learn how to fly? Am I supposed to learn how to swim? Like, is this what am I supposed to do? So what I'm getting from Nursi is, if you take it at that level, at best, you're going to become a wild beast. This is how he put it. And if you look at humanity, yes, this is what we are becoming, actually. The more we learn about how to, quote unquote, conquer nature, again within quotes, we are really becoming beasts, like wild animals who are killing the planet. So in this sense, that type of learning backfired on us, if you take it this way. But what is the proper thing that I'm supposed to learn then? And I think this is where now Iman is coming into the picture. Iman means what, like, read this existence as a book. This is what I'm supposed to learn. What does it tell me? What is the meaning of this existence? There is a maker of that existence. What does the maker convey to me through this actively written book? The book is still being written in front of my eyes. What does its author tell me? This is what I'm supposed to read and learn and understand. So this is why he was, when it comes to animals, he said they do act, but human is supposed to learn. And if human says that, oh, I am supposed to learn how to act like animals, then that means, well, sorry, but this is a wrong direction. So my purpose of reading or my purpose of learning is being questioned in here. And it should be that this existence, this universe, is a book which is still being written. So then there must exist an author of that book. What does the author tell me? Now that I am the recipient, and as if you see that there is a fantasy novel series, let's say, and it's coming one after the other, and you feel like, okay, the first one was very beautiful, second book came out, third book came out, so the author is still writing, and you're on the recipient end, you're reading it. So how do you feel? Oh, why did the author give this example? Within a certain political climate, he gave this example. What did he mean by that? So on and so forth, right? As a careful reader, if you're reading any novel, let's say if you're reading Dostoevsky, you would say that, well, he was living in such a time, and this is why he used this example, so on and so forth. What does my maker or the maker of this universe tell me through the life that he is creating me in? This is what I'm supposed to be learning. So I think this is why, at least is what I'm understanding from humans' perfection of learning. This is where humans is going to differ from the animals. Otherwise, if I say that, yes, I am a smart animal, I will learn how to fly because I am not given wings, but with my intellect, I can make wings and I can fly. What's the point then? So I think this is where now Iman is, at least the author is introducing us a useful flavor of learning for human. And also there's a useless flavor of learning for human, which author described as denial at the beginning, kufur.
Jazakallah khairan for everyone's comments and thoughts. Dua, go ahead.
I guess this is also reminding me of another surah that we discussed at Drexel, where we talked about how this conversation that the angels were having with Allah, in which Allah was like, I'm going to establish a Khalifa on the earth. And the angels responded and they were like, why are you going to appoint somebody who is going to cause bloodshed when we, like, praise you and we exalt you? So, and we discussed the conclusion basically was that is the purpose of a Khalifa. That is the purpose of a vicegerent. It is to praise Allah, and to, like, exalt his glory. And I'm like, when I'm thinking of animals, I'm thinking like they are perfect when they are fulfilling the purpose that they were made for. So a bird is made to fly. When a bird flies, or like is able to do whatever like Allah has sent him down to do, that is that bird's perfection. So our perfection would then be to fulfill our purpose on this earth, which would be to be that perfect Khalifa, perfect representative of God. And I think I'm also thinking of like the Asfala Safilin verses as like, like a baby is born and a baby is, perfect, whatever, perfectly like praises God, doesn't attribute anything to themselves. But then, they grow up and they start to think, that they have some power, or people tell them, oh, wow, like you're so beautiful, you're so strong. And they start to think that they have some share in it. And then, like something happens, like they fall down, or, they get a cut on their face or something. And that is their like learning process to realize that it's not theirs. And then I guess like that is when they sort of like, go through that phase of questioning, like, is it really mine? Like, or at least I'm guessing like that's ideally how you should be. Like, you do go through some learning in your life to get to that point of iman again, which I guess is that perfection, because that iman helps you attribute the artwork to Allah. It helps you exalt Allah. It helps you, like glorify him. So that's how I'm seeing it, but I'm not sure if I'm right.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. I think like from all these comments, something that stands out for me is perfection through learning and proclaiming his worship of God and serving to him. But really, the perfection, and I think this is an important distinction that was being made in earlier comments, but the perfection is not through gaining something. The perfection is not in having achieved something. The perfection is through, he says it here, through the tongue of impotence and poverty. So through the language tongue of being weak and having nothing and being needy. So you don't gain perfection by gaining degrees. You don't gain perfection by becoming or creating some amazing technology, or becoming like something crazy, is maybe like a rocket to Mars, or I don't know. You don't gain perfection in all. This is not where your perfection comes from. It's not from gaining things. It's not from building, let's say, achievements throughout your life. You look back and you say, I have achieved so much in my life. I'm perfect. Rather, your perfection is in your understanding, or your ability, however much through the tongue of impotence and poverty, that you're able to basically ask from your creator. That's where your perfection comes from. And that's kind of it's also kind of what the purpose of the human seems to be, that you've been created needy, and your goal as you grow up, you think, oh, you're gaining more power, you're gaining more strength, you're gaining more ability, agency. But really, the purpose is not for you to now grow up and be a very strong animal that is now very capable and can like do a lot of things very quickly and amazingly, but rather to realize as you're growing up that no, you're still needy, and you've always been created needy. But the reason for that is now that you can turn and supplicate or ask from the perfect one. Brother Bikram, go ahead.
So I know we have little time, and it's not a good time to maybe say something different, but I think when it comes to word learning, I would just say we need to be careful. So author is not saying that human comes the earth to learn something. He says he has to learn. He needs to learn. His duty, and then he says this means that the man's innate duty is to be perfected, through learning. So this translation learning, in the original, it is, just give me a second. Yes, ta'allum, right? So it says his innate duty is takammul, like to be perfected through ta'allum. And ta'allum doesn't mean learn, it means teach. So allama, right? It's teaching. So ta'allum is to be taught. Like if we translate here, if we put it here, it's sent to be his innate duty to be perfected by being taught. So he needs to learn, and this knowledge, whatever it is given to him. So if we take such phrases and say that, okay, we need to learn, so what are we needs to learn? What are we, supposed to learn? If we ask such questions, I think we put the text and the entire thing in the wrong base. The point here is not what you are learning, how you are learning, and so on. The point is you have to learn, meaning you are not giving things at the beginning, but you have to ask them one by one. This is what learning signifies here. At every moment of your life, you have to ask for something. You will realize a need, and then it will be given to you. And you will call this as learning. And you have to go through this. And thus he's making this jump, as Abdurrahman, you said, why he's talking about now supplication and so on, because the entire process is about the supplication anyway. It's not that you learn something and then say that, oh, then I will learn how to make supplication. No. You have to learn, meaning you are just given needs, but nothing else. And you are in a weak position. And you have no option but have to ask and then gain. You have to learn. So this is what learning here means here. It's not that we have a great skills in learning and we have to find the best way to put this learning. You have to ask, and then you will be given. And then you will ask, the real questions then. That is to say, it is to know the answers of the questions. Through whose compassion is my life so wisely administered? Like all these questions are about, again, being sustained in this way. Through whose generosity am I so kindly raised? Through whose graciousness am I so delicately nurtured? When you realize that you have to go through this, it's like we glorify learning, but the learning is nothing to be glorified. It means a need. Like I would be perfectly happy if when I was born, like if we take like talking about the learning itself, I would be better position if I was given everything I need at the beginning, so I don't need to learn. Who cares about the learning? Like forget about your academic head. Don't glorify learning. It's something, a weakness that you have to learn. And again, emphasis is that you have to make supplication every time. I hope I didn't complicate this. I apologize if I did.
No, thank you. I think that was actually in line with the rest of the comments, as far as I understood. Though I think your comment about being careful with this, like I already said, perfected through. I guess we could substitute perfected through making supplication, perfected through asking, because this is really what that learning is you're in need of something, you're asking for something, and you're following that, and then who do you ask it from? And it's interesting here, he says it is to know the answers of these questions. So you know the answers of these questions because you're supplicating to that one with your needs. And in here he says it is to beseech and supplicate the provider of needs. So like you have found this provider of needs, you have found the answer to these questions, and now you're supplicating to them. But of course this is because it is a process of learning, like it's a process. It's not that you find the answer once and now you supplicate, but it's like a continuous thing where you need to ask these questions, find the one, and then supplicate. But we're almost out of time, and we can't really continue on with the next topic, but I'll open the floor to any last comments or questions or anything that has just been left for you practically or for your life. Yeah, Brother Yusuf, go ahead.
So one of the things that we are sent to here without is, who is my maker? I don't know the answer to that, right? So I am supposed to find that answer. And author is as if saying that this is what you are made for. So human is made to, like, unlike bird, unlike dog, unlike anything, human comes here, and as you started the conversation with, do not look at it with why God created me. Put the creator aside for a second. As a human, you are here, and animals are there, you are here, and human is, like, compared to a bird or a sparrow or anything, we don't know, but we learn. But author is saying that what is it that you are ultimately, or what are you designed to ultimately achieve is, who is your maker, who is your sustainer, who is your provider. This is what I am supposed to be getting out of this life. So I think, and as far as I understand, this is what author is identifying Iman as. And maybe one final point. So is the topic of all this conversation to say that do not make planes, do not make submarines, do not do anything and just ask those questions? This is a question that can come. But just to give a one sentence answer in case anybody is having that question in there. Human is, as Brother Birkan was putting, inevitably you will learn. I mean, this because you are meant to, you are made to. So you will be making like food, you will be making plane, you will be making things. While you are making these, you will ask those questions. Who is maintaining me? Because I know making a plane or putting the effort, none of these is going to create the outcome. But I am being provided with the outcome. So who is the one that brings in the outcome? Who is the one who sustains me, nurtures me? All these questions that the author asks in there, you can only ask them as you try to achieve things, make things in this life. So this is why the topic, the conclusion of the conversation here is not to say that, oh, don't try to do any of these stuff and just go and shut yourself in a cave and try to find your creator. No, as you live life, you will realize that you try to do things, but beyond your power, beyond your knowledge, things are being given to you, are being created. So who is the one who makes this? Who is the one who creates this? Is the ultimate human question. And the answer to this is ultimate human purpose of life or perfection, which is Iman, is what I understand.
Yeah, thank you. And definitely there's much more we could talk, but we are out of time. And I think just as a final comment from me about what I think really stands out from today's discussion for me that hopefully I could take for the rest of my life, I guess, is really this contradictory kind of statement, or initially it looked contradictory. It's like my perfection, or the human's perfection, is not in, being very capable or being perfect, let's say materially, or but your perfection is in however much you can speak in the tongue of your neediness, or supplicate in the tongue of your neediness. So your perfection is in basically your neediness, which is a very different view. جزاك الله خيرا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. وآخر دعواهم إن الحمد لله رب